Welcome to DB Sync's Order to Cash Automation webinar series, a multi-part program that explores the benefits of automating your order to cash process. In this series, my colleague and product expert Aman will discuss all things order to cash, what it is, why it's important, and how automation can help improve your efficiency, accuracy, and profitability. Today's first episode will focus on the main challenges CFOs contend with, focusing on a successful cash-to-order automation using DB Sync cash integration products, and the key takeaways for success with your own order-to-cash automation transformation. We'll walk through why CFO teams struggle with order-to-cash, what key KPIs take a hit, the importance of investing in data integration. We'll walk through a case study of order-to-cash. We'll see how DB Sync enables data integration and then follow up on how that company does post-data integration. And then we'll lastly focus on the key takeaways for order-to-cash automation success. So whether you're just starting to think about automating your order-to-cash process or you're already in the process, this webinar series will provide you with the information you need to make informed decisions. So let's settle in, listen up, and learn how automation can help you take your business to the next level. Now, Aman, before we get started on the common challenges finance teams face with order-to-cash processes, refresh our memory on the order-to-cash process first, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely, Adrian. So I'll take you through, firstly, on what order-to-cash process is, like for a quick recap. So typically in the order-to-cash process that you see, right, so there are different stages across the whole cycle. So you see the purchase phase where customer comes in, you have sales guys taking their orders and put it through an order management system. It could be via CRM too. And even before a new order, there are multiple decisions that the sales team needs to take, which could be around, hey, do I process this order? What is the credit history of this particular customer? Do I need to take some approvals? How has been the payment history of this particular customer? And all of those scenarios, right? So it typically goes through the scenario of purchase to order management to credit management. And then you probably want to fulfill that order. That order goes back to your warehouse where the product would probably be shipped, and an invoice would be generated. And once the invoice is generated, it will be added to your ledger or the accounting system, so that it's a system of record where you could quickly make a note that, hey, this is the money coming in or going out through your particular process. And then you will probably, once the order is processed, the payment collections reports and are generated to see, based on the products that were sent out to customers, what payments have been processed, what is the money coming in for the systems or for the finance teams in particular, and then you have a reporting structure in place.
Okay.
So now, when you talk about the order to cash process as a whole, there are major pain points there for finance teams in general and for CFO teams in general. So what typically happens is there is a lot of manual data entry that needs to be done in your accounting systems or ERPs. And since it's manual entry, it could lead to data errors, right? So, and which could absolutely lead to wrong payments being done, or that there are issues with invoices or being checks issued to the vendors, or it could also lead to inaccurate decision making because the data that sits in these systems is not to the point, and it could probably lead your team to go through multiple cycles of frustrating to and fro's with other teams to kind of get that data corrected and have make the right decisions. So we also see that sales teams typically take a lot of time of the CFO while asking for approvals, it could be credit approvals, it could be looking back at when they're chasing invoices or certain payments that need to be made, or there are certain process changes. The teams always go to and fro, and there's a good amount of time that's being spent on these activities rather than their core strategic activities that they should be focusing on. So that's another key pain that that's seen cross-domain or through multiple functions. Now, for finance teams in particular, what happens is you'd see collections teams chasing aged invoices or previous invoices or payments that are not being made, because that is leading to a higher debt. And and they also do not have a clear view of which customer payment is at risk, right? So they don't have a clear data on, hey, this customer has not paid in the past, or this is how the history looks like. Or when a request for approval comes in to a CFO to probably open credit logs, or it could be just looking at the payment history. I think finance team is constantly trying to speed that process up so that they have more money in, and they could record that data against the right invoices. So as I said, again, they have to also manually match these payments against the incoming invoices. It's a manual kind of an activity, right? So you have to kind of do it across multiple systems. You have to look at the payment modes too, right? So that's a typical challenge, right? So all in all, across the O2C cycle for finance teams in particular, we see that there are bigger challenges when it comes to putting the right data at the right system, because if we don't have the right data, it will lead to multiple process challenges, which could be payments coming in, reporting, having those in your ledger entries, or even like chasing those payments, because you have to have that closure on your O2C cycle.
Mhm.
So we see that your profitability or cash flows take a hit. There is a higher O2C cost, and also your daily sales outstanding are increasing because you're not able to get those payments on time, and sales are being done, but the credit cycle is kind of getting elongated, which also leads to a loss in employee productivity, because finance teams is not able to focus on their core jobs, which is accounting, or specific operations that are involved, which is ledgers or working with the right systems. Rather, they're chasing different teams or customers, which could also lead to conflicts with customers too if you don't have the right data, and that even your customer experience takes a hit.
Yeah, those are
Or
definitely some major pains indeed. I'm glad you
yeah,
brought these out.
yes, Adrian. And to to extend on the same conversation, so when you talk about the key KPIs that take a hit for the finance teams in particular, it's your daily sales outstanding. DSO is one of these key metrics, and typically through sources like McKinsey and Deloitte, you've seen that if your order to cash process is not automated, if it's if your finance teams in particular are struggling with all of these pains that I've just highlighted, you'd see the DSOs getting elongated, or you'll also see the cash flows taking a hit, like a coming cash flow going down, or your cycle time is extending, and even your service costs are extending for a particular order or a set of orders that are coming in. All right. So just to kind of recap on, okay, hey, we know that these are the pains. So what do we do now? So when you talk about order to cash, I think data integration is one of these key technologies that comes up and gives you that solution. So when you talk about data integration, and this is a very interesting infographic by McKinsey, which says that whenever you're working across O2C, there are different phases, right? So we showed you different pieces in the cycle that exist, and typically the efficiencies could be there on the order intake side. So whenever sales is taking your orders, putting in the system, and the same data has to sync to your inventory, to your accounting, or any other systems. It has to be connected. It has to be a seamless experience, because both of these teams can't work on different set of data, because they'll again spend a lot of time and effort working with this data, which will not be correct. So there should not be an inconsistency of data that should exist. So McKinsey says that you can absolutely save about 15 to 30% in cost if you're able to automate order creation, and you can it can result in improving back office effort. It could improve your digital invoicing and even your cash applications, right? So once you improve one particular stage, which is order intake, and typically though both of these areas, order intake and invoicing, are the key areas that have that are coming up in the O2C cycle that needs improvement, where your leakage can also happen, and your customer experience is dependent on both of these stages. So again, if you're focusing on data integration, you can absolutely see 30% shorter DSO, and which could absolutely lead to appropriate stock levels, lower process lead times, because you've automated that process. There's one single unified view of the data, and all of these teams are accessing those data and working on it. And in the end, as we have said again, right, so it improves employee satisfaction, because the work would be less repetitive. There'll not be a manual effort, and the teams would not be bogged down while they're working on strategic or core activities. So yes, that the complexity is reduced across the whole process.
Well, that certainly makes sense. Obviously, if you can improve in two areas, you would assume that would improve, the process end to end. And so kind of what you've described are, I would imagine, are universals for teams that are trying to automate their order to cash processes. So I think it might be helpful now if you could maybe walk us through a specific case study so that we can sort of see the process in action, start to finish, maybe.
Absolutely. So what you're looking at now is one of these virtual data integration case studies that we have with a business called Auto Parts e-commerce. So I'll take you through the business scenario, what's happening there, and you'll get a sense of how their order to cash process was pretty complex. They were having those similar pains that we just shared on the first slide, and you'd see that the impact that it had and how data integration kind of eased that process. So just to kind of recap, so if you look at Auto Parts e-commerce, they were doing pretty good on the sales side. But when it came to the O2C process, they had one person who was actually moving order entry data from their CRM, which was Salesforce, to their accounting system, which was Dynamics GP. And this particular employee, their whole day's job was to kind of just move that data from one system to the other. That was one challenge. Other than that, what also happened was, due to this manual data movement, the team also saw delayed payment collections and a higher day sales outstanding. So it was pretty high from an industry side. If you look at 50 days, it was on the higher side. And they also were struggling with lower cash flows, because they saw that when invoices are being sent out to customers, they were not being paid on time. So it was a lower cash in. And there were also errors being seen, right? So all these problems were kind of interconnected. So when you're manually moving data from one system to the other, you're making data errors, which is leading to invoicing errors, which is leading to delayed payments, which is also leading to lower cash flows, right? So all of these areas were taking a hit. So that's
chain reaction.
Yes. So just from a numbers perspective, from the O2C side, their O2C process cost was about 2 to 3%, and their days sales outstanding, as I said, was on the higher side for about 50 days, and operating cycle 2 was about 75 days. And in terms of the automation that was and the digital transformation that was done in their system was very minimal. It's about 20%, right? Because so they had to kind of go in and they looked at BB Sync, and I think the first area that we identified was, whenever a new order was being placed in the system, it should automatically move to their accounting system, which was Dynamics GP, and without the need for a double data entry, right? So you could actually put in an order, and that order could automatically move to their accounting system. Now, what you could additionally do is, when this automated data movement happens, the invoice could be generated. You will have all the latest information on the address, any other details around the customers, and that information can then be relayed to your warehouse system when the orders are being placed, right? So it's with that just one change, which was impacting multiple areas, you could actually bring in better efficiencies. And what we additionally did was, You could also build automated email workflows to customers who had pending invoices, because as we said, a lot of those invoices which were not being paid on time led to lower cash flows. So you could build an automated email workflows where not a dedicated person from finance team has to do this activity day in and day out every day, that they have to manually follow up on those emails. You could actually create those email workflows when a particular order is placed, and post that it gets into the system. So it's been constantly, it can be constantly scheduled depending on how you want it to be. So apart from that, finance team also saw automation as one of these key levers that they can use as part of their future roadmap, because as we said, the O2C automation was about 20%. So all of these areas which are impacted, which could be sending invoices to customers on time, having the order updated in the accounting systems, or also checking for some data against a data set. All of that could be automatically done via the system.
So I'm imagining then you're going to tell us a little bit about this having a huge impact on auto parts e-commerce. So can you maybe tell us, sort of post-integration, after all these things have happened, what successes have we seen, or where have the greatest improvements been?
Yep. Again, so I'd come on to what happened and the post implementation scenario. So when auto parts went ahead and implemented DB Sync, there was a considerable improvement in terms of, as we said, there was a lot of efficiency in how the data was being moved from one system to the other, because now you did not have to rely on one dedicated source and their bandwidth to kind of move that data from one system to the other, right? There's one guy who was just doing it and his bandwidth was getting wasted, and he was, the time was taken off of his plate, where the core job was accounting, or they were part of the finance team. So if you look at it, so DB Sync was able to automate the data transfer process, and also the O2C process cost across the whole system dropped by a staggering 50%. So
wow.
Yeah, and even the automation levers, as we said, right? So it increased from 20 to 50% when we did these changes. So it was from moving the data automatically to the other system, to creating automatic workflows for emails where you could chase these invoices, to even checking the data against data that might be residing in other systems or Excels too, right? So a lot of that automation came into place where the teams themselves could focus on those core activities. And as you see, that there was a major positive impact on the day sales outstanding, because they started off the DSO at about 50 days and it came back to around 30 days. And similarly, your operating cycle also improved. So all in all, with just a positive movement towards automating this for your finance teams, where they don't have to do this manually, or they don't have to invest themselves doing this process in a manual fashion. We could bring these improvements, and this in future they're also looking at other areas that they could automate, which they're doing manually today, right? So it's just not specific to moving data across systems, but also their specific processes too, right? So it could be invoices, it could be matching those payments, and those areas are being explored too.
Well, you've certainly given us a case study in this webinar, Raman, for finance teams to really think through all the pieces so they can ensure that their order to cash automation efforts are effective and profitable. Certainly this example that you've shown us, those are some pretty significant numbers. So I think that lets us know, obviously right off the top, how important automation is. Now, Miriam Hake, a research director for IDC, tells us that order to cash automation is essential for businesses that want to stay competitive in today's digital economy. So maybe tell us, I see here you've got a couple of key points for us. Maybe let us know a little bit more about sort of the takeaways for what CFOs can do.
Absolutely. So I think just to recap on the whole flow that we did. So we started off saying that, hey, these are the pain points that you have, and this is what you could do as a low-hanging fruit. And I think for CFOs and finance teams in general, I think the best practices that they could go with for their data integration projects is, I think firstly, they need to identify the status quo. And when we say status quo, they have to recognize the pain point that their teams have in the existing O2C process. It could be as trivial as moving data from maybe Excel to those systems, right? It could be third-party tools that they're using to move that data. Or it could also be updating existing information, right? The latest information depending on the action that is happening on the sales side or the order side, right? So you have to understand the existing process, the status quo, and then assess that what needs automation and what does not, right? So you have to have that view of identifying that these are the specific areas that I need to integrate. Now you also want to bring in that change management and key stakeholders from across teams. So it's just not finance. You need to talk to IT, you need to talk to sales and ops too, because this will be an exercise where you'll be able to explore other areas that you could automate across different functions. And a lot of the times when you automate those functions, automate those areas, and other functions could be a big impact because your teams is going to inevitably fall in that process. So you need to have a clear-cut communication with other teams too, to understand how they do this and create a bigger picture so that you have a comprehensive data integration strategy with clear KPIs. Now, the next thing is you have to select the right tools, right? So you have to look at the credibility of those tools, what has been their experience when it comes to solving those problems, and the kind of features that they support specific to your needs. Do they work with your system? So, for example, in the case study that we shared, we said that, hey, they're using Salesforce as a CRM and Dynamics GP as one of these accounting systems. So if, for example, if you're going for the same, if you have some systems in mind that you're currently using, you should be looking at the vendors from that lens so that they have the expertise, they have the credibility, they have the consulting experience as well while you're selecting a particular vendor. Post that, when you start doing the data integration, you have to look at the data quality, right? Because the data quality, as we said, is leading to those errors. So you have to create that right set of data, at least do that initial activity of validation, cleansing, whatever is required to take it to the right form before you take it to the pilot stage. And this is where you'll get into the test and train environment, right? So start small, start with one particular use case where you identify that, hey, this is the process that we do today. This is a specific use case that this is going to have an impact on, and then grow big. So you want to deploy this in a test environment or a staging environment even before going live, so that you can get a sense of over a month or even over a few weeks that there is some change, and you need to record that change and also share it with the teams and learn from their experiences too. So that's your test and train kind of stage. And I think the final stage is when you go live, which is the deploy and iterate. I think you need to constantly monitor against your key KPIs that we just shared in the webinar. So you need to have a final outcomes clarity on that. These are the KPIs that are going to take an impact. This is where the process is going to get optimized, and constantly iterate and tweak as and when it's needed.
Wow, you've certainly, and I mean, really a walkthrough of beginning to end of all the things to focus on, all the areas and nuances to think about that we may not have been top of the mind when we're kind of in the grind doing all our, day-to-day things. So from what I heard, the benefits are pretty clear. You've got increased accuracy because you're reducing errors, which of course reduces those in pricing, quoting, and invoicing. You've got improved efficiency. What I'm understanding, you get to speed up the quote to cash process as you were showing us, which frees up the employees, and they are allowed to then focus on other tasks, right, that are much less manual.
Yeah.
They can also enhance the customer experience, right? The team, if knowing kind of what's happening here, can provide customers with more efficient and streamlined experiences that you were talking about, right? So not just like do they enjoy the experience, but literally from quoting to payment, how that area is streamlined and much more efficient and effective in increasing that customer satisfaction. And then lastly, I would imagine for the business as well, improved visibility, right? You can see what's happening in your quote to cash process, and then you can obviously help to identify and address those inefficiencies. Like you said, you've got to get in there, know what you want to measure, test and train, and continue to iterate as new things come to light. So I think we've got a great start here, and we're going to continue to explore the benefits and analyze and really look more at the order to cash series in our next webinar. So please tune in and hear how our products can improve not just your business, but really the overall quality of your life, as we showed you here. So please visit our website at www.mydpsync.com. There's a little link on the slide you can look to, or you can email us directly at products@mydpsync.com. So thank you very much for listening with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, please check out our information on our website and see how we can get and keep your apps talking. Thank you very much.